Thank you. So the Bhagavad Gita is um, has all the knowledge within it, yet there are some things that are within the Gita that are not present elsewhere. So there's some things in the Gita, Prabhupada writes, that one will not find anywhere else, but anything else that is there is inside the Gita. Now you might wonder, well, you might wonder, the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis are not there in the Bhagavad Gita, or something else. The story of Maharaj Bharat is not there in the Bhagavad Gita, or Bali Maharaj is not there in the Bhagavad Gita. But everything is there in essence. All knowledge is there. And this is because these are the words of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whatever Krishna speaks, when Krishna speaks, all knowledge is present within the Bhagavad Gita. All knowledge is present within the words of God. And therefore, the Gita is the essence of all knowledge. It is the ultimate knowledge. Now, there are 700 editions of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada writes. More than that now, actually. But none of these editions have been able to bring modern editions, so to say. There's some commentaries of the acharyas, those are different. But none of these other editions, Prabhupada says, have been able to make one a devotee of Krishna. And that is because, although these are translations of the Gita, the translator or the writer injects their own speculation, their own ideas within the pages of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's a mixture. Krishna's words are mixed with the words of someone who is mundane or someone who has limited intelligence. And therefore, the edition of the Gita that Srila Prabhupada has provided us is Bhagavad Gita as it is. So Prabhupada said he himself was a pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, the Lord, who was completely capable and qualified to write transcendental literature. But Srila Prabhupada himself said, even though he was perfectly qualified, he said, I am just a mailman. I am taking Krishna's words and I'm giving them to the rest of the world. I'm taking Krishna's words and I'm passing it to that person who is meant to receive it. So even though there are thousands of editions of the Bhagavad Gita, millions in print, the Bhagavad Gita still remains the most confidential knowledge. It remains very confidential. Why? Because although the Gita is there, although people read the Gita, they can only understand its message. They can only know what Krishna is saying if they hear it through the words, through the mouth of a pure devotee who is giving it to them as it is, who is giving Krishna's words to us as it is, and furthermore explaining those words so that we can understand Krishna's deep words. When God speaks, then his words are very deep. And when he speaks, most people cannot understand. And this is where the devotee, this is where the pure devotee of the Lord is so important. It's that devotee that helps us understand the words of God, that reveals or illuminates the words of God. So for this reason, although there's millions of Gitas in print, the Gita is the most confidential knowledge, because we need the mercy, we need the guidance of a pure devotee in order to understand its messages. Just as a quick example, there are so many people who read many editions of the Gita. Even my mother, before encountering Prabhupada's Gita, she had read Gandhi's Gita, she had read Ramakrishna's Gita, she had read 3 or 4 different types of Gita. She was searching spiritually. But none of those Gitas by reading those Gitas, she did not feel, she didn't, the knowledge of the Gita was not clear. She didn't understand the message of the Gita. And then so happened that my father received a Bhagavad Gita at an airport. He was at that time 17 years old. This was 10 years before he got married. He had received a Gita at the airport for 25 cents. This was about 50 years ago. So it was, money was very different at that time. He paid 25 cents for the Gita and he got the Bhagavad Gita, 1/4. And after he took that Gita, he put it on his bookshelf. And for 10 years, no one touched that Bhagavad Gita. It just collected dust. It was sitting on the bookshelf for 10 years on his bookshelf. And my father was a collector. Like, he didn't throw things away. He would always keep things, and and especially the Gita, right? Coming from India, people, they still, they honor the Gita. So he put it on his shelf and he just stayed there for 10 years. And after 10 years, my mother picked it up out of his bookshelf. She had some extra time at that time. She was pregnant with my older brother. She was again searching. She had read other Gitas in her youth, but the sort of that those questions came up again, as all of us on this call have searched for spiritual life. This is why we're devotees. So she was searching, and among the hundreds of books there on the bookshelf, somehow or the other, by Sukriti, right, good fortune, she pulled out Prabhupada's Gita. She pulled out the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and she started to read it. And after reading it, in a matter of few days, finishing the whole book, she could not put it down. And after that, her life changed. There's no turning back. Her life changed, right? So this is what the Gita does. It changes people's lives if it is given purely. It sat on the bookshelf for 10 years, but still it was meant for someone. And then after she read it, then she shared the knowledge with my father, and then he became a devotee. Both of them became devotees as a result of it. Then they shared that knowledge with us, with me and my brother. Because of that, we became fortunate to become part of this Krishna consciousness. And then we're sharing it with our children, with our families. So in this way, one Gita affected the lives of so many people. And then, of course, with that knowledge, not just the family, but they shared it with others, other devotees, other people searching for spiritual life. And it was all starting from that one Gita. This is the power of transcendental knowledge. This is the power of when knowledge is kept pure, of real spiritual knowledge. So many Gitas, but that one Gita made an effect where it changed the lives of at least 20, 30 dozen people. It directly changed their lives. So this Bhagavad Gita as it is that we have is a great gift. It's a gift of spiritual knowledge that will create a revolution in the world. Prabhupada said that one day people will say that these books save the world. And today we see it, that the world is under so much turmoil. It's such a scary place. It's such a dangerous place. And what will change things? What will actually bring change to this world? It is actually only these books. Only Krishna consciousness will change the trajectory of this world. So this is the importance of Bhagavad Gita as it is. It is the knowledge as it is. Now, as an introduction to this Gita, and in order to appreciate the Gita, we must understand that the Gita is not a self-standing book, although it is, but actually it is part of a larger book. The Gita is one chapter in the entire Mahabharata. Just a chapter. And because it's spoken by Krishna, it's the most important chapter. It's really the only chapter that anyone needs. But still, there's a context to the Gita which we need to be aware of, and that is the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata has 100,000 verses, and the Gita has 700 verses. So, like I said, it's a chapter of the Mahabharata. And the events of the Mahabharata, the events of Krishna's pastimes, are leading up to the Bhagavad Gita. So it is very important to understand the events that lead up to the Gita, because only then will we understand the word is the urgency of the Gita, that why it was so urgent, the relevance of the Gita, the importance of it, and why Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight. One of the biggest misnomers or criticisms against the Gita is that, oh, the Gita is encouraging war. People say, many times people who are anti the Gita, they will pass out flyers saying that, see, this book endorses war. It endorses violence. So to respond to that challenge, and also for ourselves to understand why the Gita in chapters 1 and 2, which we're about to start, is why in the Gita Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight, we must understand the context. Of course, for other reasons also. It's not just the context, but it gives context. And especially for those who are challenging, it gives a response as to why Krishna tells Arjuna to fight. The Mahabharata has approximately 100,000 verses, 200,000 lines in Sanskrit. It's the greatest and longest epic in the world. Scholars today say that it was composed, it was in its first form at 400 BCE. So 400 BCE, which means about 2,500 years ago. That's what scholars say. Of course, we say that or not we, the Vedic literature say that it's 5,000 years old. But even if we accept the academic dating, it's one of the oldest books in the world. It's the greatest epic of all time. It's roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and Odyssey combined. So the Iliad and Odyssey are considered like the longest epics in the Western world. But the Mahabharata is 10 times the length of the Iliad and Odyssey. So what is the story of the Mahabharata? The Mahabharata, many times people mistake it to be a story of politics, intrigue, to be just a very materialistic story. But actually the Mahabharata is a spiritual literature. It can be misunderstood or missed, the point can be missed, but it's actually a spiritual literature about the glories, character, and pastimes of the great devotees of the Lord. It's a story about great souls, the great devotees of the Lord, the Pandavas in particular, and their mother, Queen Kunti, their wife, Draupadi. These were great devotees of the Lord who performed activities in this world to set an example for the rest of the world, to teach by their own example how a devotee leads their life and how they depend on Lord Krishna. So Maharaj Yudhishthir, he is Dharma personified. He's the son of Dharma. He was most noble and is a great devotee of Krishna. And Maharaj Yudhishthir, it said that he was so pious, he was so great that actually when he would walk 2 inches above the ground. He would not touch the surface of the earth. He was like a demigod on this planet. Because following Dharma pleases the Lord, Krishna was so pleased with Maharaj Yudhishthir as being, so noble, so dharmic, that anything that Maharaj Yudhishthir would ask, whenever he asked anything from Lord Krishna, Krishna would always fulfill it. He would never say no to him. And this we see at the end of Krishna's pastimes in Hastinapur and Kurukshetra. When the battle of Kurukshetra happened, after the battle, everyone was leaving. The Pandavas were victorious, and Krishna was also leaving. He was going back to his kingdom of Dwarka. And when Krishna was leaving, as it happens everywhere, it happened in Vrindavan and Dwarka, when Krishna leaves, no one wants him to leave, right? So all the devotees, they go forward and they beg Krishna, please stay, don't leave. But Krishna has to leave, right? So Queen Kunti, she came and she begged the Lord, please stay. Arjuna said, please stay. Everyone asked the Lord, please stay. But Krishna was very determined to go. But then Maharaj Yudhishthira, he came and he asked the Lord, you please stay for just at least one more month, which is a long time, 1 month. I mean, Krishna was the king of Dwarka. All his queens are waiting. Everyone is waiting. Kurukshetra is finally over. But he says, you please stay with us for another month. And Lord Krishna, he agrees. He stays for another month. Why? Because Maharaj Yudhishthira had asked him. So Maharaj Yudhishthira, he is the eldest of the Pandavas, the most noble. He's the most tolerant, the most compassionate, the most wise. He's actually not the most powerful in strength. Bhima and Arjuna are the most powerful. But because of his divine qualities, all the other 4 brothers were very obedient and loyal to Maharaj Yudhishthira, because only he had those qualities to that extent. And his greatness is actually shown. Yes, it's actually shown when although he wasn't the most powerful, but because he had the most knowledge and devotion and wisdom, he is able to save the lives of all of his other 4 brothers. You may know this story. When all the 5 brothers are in exile, then they come to the side of a lake and they're dying of thirst, not dying, but very thirsty. And all the other 4 brothers go first and they begin to drink from that lake, even though there's a crane there that tells them, you cannot drink from this lake. This lake belongs to me. So they had strength, but they could not tolerate the pangs of thirst. And so they drank that water anyway. And as a result of drinking that water, they died, as the crane had warned them. And so this crane, then Maharaj Yudhishthira comes there to drink water, and he's about to drink the water, but this crane tells Maharaj Yudhishthira, he says, you cannot drink this water because this lake belongs to me. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, being such a great king and emperor, like his other brothers, he could have said, who are you, you little crane? You're nothing for me. I will still drink. But no, he, due to being so devout to dharma, he does not take what does not belong to him. So he stops and he says, okay, what do I need to do so that I can drink the water of this lake? And the crane says, you need to answer my questions. You need to answer my questions. And only when you answer my questions, because I know you are the most noble, will I let you drink from this lake. Because I have some questions, and my questions need to be answered before anything's going to happen. It's like people say, right? When you're very eager to know something, this is how eager we should be for transcendental knowledge. It's actually a very nice example. For spiritual knowledge, this is how eager one has to be. Life or death, I'm going to get my questions answered. Who is God? What is the purpose of life? These are the questions for which human life exists. These are the questions that are the questions of human life. So this crane wants to learn from Dharma personified. He knows this is a great wise person, and this is a great opportunity for me. And so just to hear from Maharaj Yudhishthira, he makes all of this happen. And so Yudhishthira Maharaj says, okay, what is your question? And to this, the crane responds with many questions, one of which is the most famous. And he says, he asked Maharaj Yudhishthira, he says, what is the most amazing thing in this world? And to this, Maharaj Yudhishthira replies, He says the most amazing thing is that although we see that every person in this world dies, and we see so many people dying around us, we think that we will never die. We still think that we will never die. Just recently, my grandmother passed away. She was 97 years old when she passed away. So she led a very full life, very long life. And when she passed away, then it was a moment of great lamentation for her sons and for family members and all these things. And so people lament. But very soon after that, we forget that we are also on the path. We are also living in the world of death. And the recognition, the realization that life is temporary leaves us very quickly. So although we see that people pass away from this world, they still they think that they will never die. And we feel sorry for others. Oh, they died, or for the family members, forgetting that we are in the same situation. There's a very nice quote in the Ramayana where Lord Ramachandra, he tells this to Bharat. Bharat is lamenting because Lord Ram has left him. And this is a very famous scene where Bharat comes to the forest and Lord Ram is there, and Bharat is begging him, please come back, please come back. Generally, brothers are fighting for a kingdom, to become king of the universe, to become king or kings of their land. But here we see the spiritual consciousness, the opposite consciousness, that Bharat and Lord Ram, they were arguing with one another on who should not get the kingdom. Meaning Bharat was saying to Lord Ram, you should be king. And Ram was saying to Bharat, no, you should be king. And Bharat was saying to Lord Ram, no, you should be king. I cannot be king in your presence. You are most qualified. And at that time, Dashrath had passed away, but Janak Maharaj was there. And Janak Maharaj said, see, this is how wonderful are the godly souls, that they are in a duel of love. They are fighting out of love for one another. And so finally, the Lord being all-powerful, Lord Ramachandra wins, right? And he convinces Bharat that Bharat must be king. Because why? Because of his vow. He said that if you truly love me, you're saying that this is out of love, then you should do what I want you to do. If you truly love me, then serve me in the way that I want to be served. And this is devotional service. Prabhupada says this, that we don't just serve God, but we serve God, we serve Krishna in the way that Krishna wants to be served. That is true service. So then Bharat is defeated because he is a devotee, and the only relationship he has with the Lord is one of love. So Lord Ram, he says, if you love me, this is why you're pushing me to come back. But if you truly love me, then don't push me to come back. You become king. Out of love, that will be true love. And so again, another nice point that comes through this, so beautiful point, is that a devotee sometimes, out of their love and service for the Lord, will take a position of honor, or will accept respect and praise from others, like in the case of a spiritual master. That sometimes love is so great, and love involves us to actually take a position that is actually uncomfortable for a devotee. It's uncomfortable for them. So Bharat Maharaj then accepts being king, and he is the king of Ayodhya for that reason. So Maharaj Yudhishthir was a very glorious devotee of the Lord, who then answers this question in this way, where he says that this is what the most amazing thing is, that we never think that we will die. although death is at every corner. So in this way, the crane is satisfied, and then the crane reveals that he is actually Dharma himself, Yudhishthira's father. And he says that I have came here, or he's a yaksha. There's different versions of the stories, but in either case, he's very satisfied with Maharaj Yudhishthira. His questions are answered. He feels great pleasure hearing from Maharaj Yudhishthira. So sometimes great souls also, they ask questions not because they don't know the answer, but they ask questions because they want to hear the answer from a self-realized soul, from someone who is so deep, so wonderful. And they want to hear it from their mouth. And so he's feeling very satisfied. And he says, now, due to your satisfying me, I will bring all 4 of your brothers back to life. So he brings them back to life. And then they are regained. So in that way, Maharaj Yudhishthira showed not just the fact that he was Maharaj Yudhishthira, but he showed his noble qualities. And this pastime shows the greatness of his nobility, and also why he was qualified to be king. And his other 4 brothers, even if he made mistakes, like he made a mistake in the gambling match, his brothers never deserted him. His brothers were always they greatly honored Maharaj Yudhishthira. And then the other one was Bhima. The next in line was Bhima, who was the great fighter, the ferocious eater, like it's mentioned in chapter 1. And he was also a very great devotee of the Lord. But his mood was in a different rasa. It was more fiery rasa. So there's many incidences in the Mahabharata where Bhima disagrees with Arjuna or Yudhishthira or even Krishna, and he feels that they should fight. They should go and fight the battle and not, complete the exile. At the end, he has a difference of opinion in terms of how Ashvatthama should be treated. But all of those things were his expression of devotion to Lord Krishna, his unalloyed expression of devotion. So he was Bhima. Then he had Arjuna. Krishna says, of the Pandavas, I am Partha. So although Maharaj Yudhishthira was the greatest in his noble qualities, and Krishna loved him for a different reason, so to say, in a different mood or rasa, Krishna loved Arjuna for being an unalloyed devotee, completely surrendered to Krishna. As we will see, he fights even though he doesn't want to fight. Maharaj Yudhishthira becomes king, although he doesn't want to be king. So the devotees perform the service to the Lord. That is their first priority. And then the final 2 brothers were Nakula and Sahadev. They too were also great devotees, and they were the sons of Madri, and they were all 5 Pandavas had the same father, Maharaj Pandu. So this image here is showing when the Pandavas and Kunti were almost burned in the house of lac by Duryodhana. So Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra and his 99 brothers, were always trying to kill the Pandavas. Actually, this can show that, but also this can also show another scene, which actually I think this is the scene. This is the scene when the Pandavas and Draupadi are going to the forest. When they retire, they give up family life, they go to the forest. Even though they were kings of the entire world and their whole life, they fought for it, right? They did so many things, but they were completely detached from that kingdom. And they go to the forest, to the mountains. And along with them, you see this dog who accompanies them. And there's a pastime in regards to that dog. But Duryodhana, he tried to kill them by the house of lac. Then he also tried to steal all their wealth by the gambling match. As you know, a very devious, deceptive way. of taking everything from them. This is the nature of gambling. And therefore, the Mahabharata speaks against gambling, that when a person gambles, even a person like Maharaj Yudhishthir, who was the only one who could answer the questions of the Yaksha, who brought his brothers back to life, who was the son of Dharma, he lost his mind as a result of gambling. And this is why gambling is one of the 4 sins, why it's so bad. And they steal everything from the 4 brothers and they try to disrobe Draupadi. This was the greatest sin that they did. The Mahabharata describes that when they insulted Draupadi, they dragged Draupadi into the assembly and tried to disrobe her, tried to insult her. Such a great Vaishnavi she was, born from the fire. She was an unalloyed devotee of Lord Krishna. And when they did this, they all reduced the duration of their life. This is the result. This is the result of performing sinful activities. Some people appear to be powerless, but if we hurt them, the reaction comes. If the more powerful hurt those who are powerless, the reaction comes. Because everyone in this world is bound by certain laws, however powerful we may be. We see today that great leaders of the world are allowing so many powerless citizens, men, women, and children, die due to their own agendas, due to their own purposes. This will not go without a reaction. That in itself, but furthermore, they were insulting a great devotee of Krishna. Draupadi, there's no devotee like her. When she is being disrobed, she's a Kshatriya girl, so it's not like she's a weakling. She's powerful also. She was first trying to resist what was Duryodhana's younger brother's name? Dushashan, yes. Dushashan, she was trying to resist him. And then at a certain point, she realizes that that this is not the solution. And even though, this is about her clothes, right? This is about the clothes on her body. But she has so much faith in the Lord that she puts her arms up and she calls out, "Hey Govinda, please save me." She puts her arms up and she calls out, "Hey Govinda, please save me." That's how great of a devotee she was. And then when Krishna saw that she surrendered everything to the Lord, at that very split second, he appears and he makes her sari unlimited. Unlimited. And they are unsuccessful. Dhritarashtra, the 99 brothers, Duryodhana, they're unsuccessful in insulting her and the Pandavas. And in fact, they become bewildered. They become afraid that what mystic potency this devotee has, that we are unable to insult them. So she in some ways saves the honor of the Pandavas. But Krishna, this is one of the great messages of the Bhagavad Gita, Name Bhakta Pranashyati. Krishna would never allow his devotee to perish in this way. So this incident is very key because due to this insult, it's specifically written, everyone who was there in the assembly, except for the Pandavas and 1 or 2 others who were devotees of the Lord and who opposed it, every single person lost the duration of their life. At that moment, the war didn't even have to happen. They were destined to die. And this offense is very critical also in understanding why the war was justified. Therefore, because they insulted the Pandavas in so many ways, and because they tried to kill them, they were actually, Duryodhana and his brothers deserved to be die. So after this gambling match happens, they're exiled to the forest. They stay there for 14 years. During that time, actually, the Pandavas, except for Bhima, are very happy because they're saintly souls. They like being in the forest. It was a curse, but it was a blessing in disguise. Therefore, devotee is happy in any situation of life because the devotee is only wanting time, it only wants to serve Krishna. So it'd be in a kingdom or it'd be in the forest. In fact, the forest is even more conducive. So the forest became their sanctuary, became their sacred space. And they also used the time in the forest to prepare for the battle, which Krishna told them would take place. He foresaw that, and he told Arjuna, go and get divine weapons so you're ready when the battle happens. And this is a great teaching for us attempting to progress in spiritual life, that our life should be a lifetime in preparation. Like the famous book about Srila Prabhupada, how Prabhupada used his life as a lifetime in preparation. We should not be disturbed if our preaching is not having much effect. We should not be disturbed if, if we're not making a lot of progress, in terms of our ambitions or goals. Rather, we should be very careful to utilize every moment that we have to advance spiritually, so that when the time comes and when Krishna wants us to preach, we are ready. We have prepared ourselves, so that when the time comes when we are actually qualified, when a person is qualified, then Krishna makes all arrangement for their preaching Krishna consciousness. He will send people. He will make arrangements for that devotee to be glorified or to preach, so that when that time comes, we are ready. Prabhupada, he prepared. And when the time came, he was ready. It's said in biographies of Prabhupada, it is said that Srila Prabhupada would read Srimad Bhagavatam or other Vedic literatures, Bhagavad Gita, all these things. As a householder, he would read 4 hours a day. He would read Bhagavatam 4 hours a day. This is what people who knew him at that time, they said. Furthermore, all of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples chanted 64 rounds every day. So I don't know how Srila Prabhupada did everything. That's why he was Srila Prabhupada. But he had a business, he had children, he was chanting, and he was on top of that reading. And you see all of our acharyas reading 4 hours a day. All of our acharyas were like this, extraordinary. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, same way, he was a high court judge, had 9 children, and he was writing books after books on spiritual knowledge. He wrote so many books. So these acharyas, they were so much under the radar for most of their life. No one really knew them. They were not famous, but they were doing so much. And this is why they were acharyas. They're contributing so much to the movement. They laid the groundwork by hour after hour, day after day, toiling to share this spiritual wisdom. So great lesson here that they were in exile for 14 years. And apparently that was a very negative thing. They lost the gambling match. They were unsuccessful in winning the kingdom. But that time actually was a great asset for them. They knew that Krishna had a plan. Therefore, Krishna made this arrangement. Otherwise, why would they have been exiled? It was giving them time to prepare, both spiritually and materially, for what was to come. So we think, oh, I was so unlucky, but maybe Krishna's giving us time to prepare. Maybe it's a very fortunate situation that we're in. Many things happened while they were in the forest. Even in the forest, they were exiled, but Duryodhana would not leave them in peace. And he sent 80,000 disciples of Durvasa Muni and Durvasa Muni himself to the Pandavas' hermitage. Just to, they had a little hermitage, and he sent them there because he knew then they would have to cook for them and feed them, and they didn't have the food. They didn't have the resources there to do it. And particularly, he sent them after Draupadi's pot had finished. She had finished eating. So Draupadi had this magic pot in the forest, that it would produce unlimited amounts of food, unlimited. So feeding 80,000 disciples of Durvasa Muni would have been no problem until she herself ate. When she ate, then the food was done for the day. Then it would produce the next day. So Duryodhana knew this, he found this out, and so he sent them particularly after Draupadi had eaten, because this way they could not feed all the disciples of Durvasa Muni. And knowing that they were in great trouble because Durvasa Muni's curse could destroy their life, they began to pray to Lord Krishna, Krishna, please save us. And at that very moment, even in the forest, Krishna never forgets them. And Krishna comes to the forest and meets them at that very moment. And he comes and he says, actually, I'm very hungry. Can you please feed me? So here are the Pandavas. They are trying to, their problem is that they need to feed 80,000 disciples of Durvasa Muni and Durvasa Muni himself. And now Krishna is at the door asking, please feed me. So they cannot say no to Krishna. Again, an example of their unalloyed devotion. Though they were more afraid of Durvasa Muni, but they're more eager to please Krishna. So she looks in her pot and she tells Krishna, I only have 1 grain of rice. They're in the forest. There's no farms nearby. There's nothing. They said, I just have 1 grain of rice. I'm sorry, I cannot give you anything. And Krishna says, this grain of rice, this is the most tasty grain of rice. It's stuck to the bottom. He takes it out and he eats it. And he feels most satisfied. He says, and now I'm fully satisfied. And the moment Krishna feels satisfied, all the 80,000 disciples of Durvasa Muni and Durvasa Muni himself, they all feel fully satisfied. And they feel so full that they think, the Pandavas must have arranged a big feast for us. Let's not go back because we won't be able to eat. Let's just leave from here. They had gone for their bath. And they said, we'll just leave from here. And so they all leave and Krishna saves the day. As he always does, Krishna saves every day for the Pandavas. So in the forest, Duryodhana in many ways tried to kill the Pandavas. And in the forest, Krishna saves them. In the forest, the Pandavas demonstrate their unalloyed devotion to Krishna. We talked about this one. This also happened in the forest, and Yudhishthira does that. So now, after all of this happens, they're exiled for 14 years. They return back to Hastinapur, and they say, we've done our share. Now, please give us our share of the kingdom. Please give us half the kingdom. Duryodhana says at that time, his famous words, he says, I will not give you enough land that fits on the head of a needle. What to speak of half of your kingdom? And this was the promise that after they complete their exile, they would get what they had. They would get it back. So the Pandavas, they say, no, we must fight for our rightful kingdom because they were kings and ruling was their dharma. And then Krishna personally asks as their peace messenger and acts as their peace messenger. And he goes back to the Kauravas, Duryodhana, twice, I think, many times. And he gives them a peace proposal. And because Krishna's God, he's perfect. And so he's also the perfect messenger. In perfect ways, he was the peace messenger and was there to convince them. But Duryodhana, due to his demoniac nature, did not agree. And he was bent on having this war. Although peace was possible, he still wanted to have the war. And again, we see this presently in the world. Although there's so many ways to make an agreement, but those who are materialistic, they want to fight. They want a war to happen. And then finally, after 2 times trying to avoid the war and asking for a peace proposal, when Duryodhana says no, then Krishna himself and Maharaj Yudhishthira, both of whom did not want the war, they say, now we must fight. And so they fight, they agree to fight, and here they are, arrayed on the battle of Kurukshetra. This is where, when they fight, all the armies end up, and the plan to settle this by a trial of arms is set. And it is here where chapter 1 begins. This is where the Bhagavad Gita is set. This is setting the scene where in chapter 1, they are situated here. Both sides are situated on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Very important to note that it is due to all of the atrocities that Duryodhana did to the Pandavas that both Krishna and Maharaj Yudhishthira agree to the fight. So why was knowing this very important? Because these things justified the battle. And in chapter 1, which we discuss next time, Prabhupada describes how there are 6 aggressors. And actually, Duryodhana had done all 6 things and was therefore an aggressor 6 times around. There's 6 aggressors that deserve to fight, to die, to be punished. And he had done each one of them. He had, attacked with deadly weapons, tried to set fire to the home, tried to kidnap their wife, and therefore they're fully justified. This was a dharmic war. They're fully justified to destroy an evil person like Duryodhana. But when they arrive on the battle, then Krishna and Arjuna are there on the battle scene. They're sitting on their beautiful chariot. And even after being, undergoing so much torment by the other side, even after being harassed by Duryodhana in so many ways, Arjuna, being a soft-hearted warrior, being a soft-hearted devotee of the Lord, he looks on the other side and he starts having second thoughts. He has great doubts as to whether or not he should fight. And he lays down his arms. He doesn't want to fight. And this is a quality of a devotee. Prabhupada specifically mentions that a devotee is very soft-hearted. Though he was the most powerful warrior on the battlefield, though he was the greatest warrior in the world, he had the power. It wasn't like he was afraid, he had any reason not to fight. I mean, probably when someone's so powerful, their arms are burning to fight. But he said to Krishna, let them come and attack us with their arms raised. Let them kill us. But why should we attack them in return? I don't need this kingdom. Why should so many people die just to put me on the throne? Put, our family or my brother on the throne. Why should we engage in this warfare? And Srila Prabhupada says that it was this soft-heartedness, this freedom from any greed or covetousness or envy or anger that made Arjuna qualified to be Krishna's friend. It was this soft-heartedness that actually made him qualified to be the recipient of the Bhagavad Gita, to be the perfect student of the Bhagavad Gita. So although Arjuna's decision is wrong, although his desire not to fight is wrong, and although he is misled at that time in his mind, he's confused, but still Prabhupada praises his soft-heartedness, and he says, see, this is the quality of a great soul, this is the quality of a great king, and definitely of a great devotee, that the king must not think about his own benefit, but must sacrifice himself for others. The devotee of the Lord never thinks about his own material happiness, but wants only to liberate the rest of the world. Paradukha dukhi. Wants to, like Vasudeva Datta, see others happy, like Maharaj Parikshit. Even at the point of death, he wants Shukadeva Goswami to speak Bhagavatam, so all the citizens, so everyone in the world can benefit from that Bhagavatam. So this is his qualification, Prabhupada says. This is why he is the perfect recipient. So even to be a student of the Gita is not an ordinary thing. We can be a student, but we will only understand if we have the mindset of Arjuna. We will only understand if we have the heart of a devotee. That is the qualification. So the speaker, the person who's giving it to us, that is the writer, Prabhupada, needs to be qualified. The translator has to be qualified, but the listener also needs to be qualified, and then that knowledge is revealed. So we must become like Arjuna, at least for this next 1 year during Bhakti Shastri time. We can all make internal resolve that we will be like Arjuna. And here we see then Arjuna becomes a disciple of Krishna. He says, we're no longer friends, not in the bad way. He's saying, I cannot just be a friend. I need guidance. And when he actually surrenders to Krishna, when we come to the point in our life where we're not just looking for someone to flatter us or to someone to, have light conversation with us, but we're actually looking for guidance, then we take the words of the Gita very seriously. So Arjuna tells Krishna, I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Then Krishna begins to instruct him. Then he gives him his spiritual knowledge. And Krishna tells him the knowledge of the Gita and convinces Arjuna to do his devotional service, not just his duty, but his devotional service to Krishna and fight this battle. So chapter 1 begins with a verse of Dhritarashtra, when Dhritarashtra speaks to Sanjay. Because how do we know what they spoke? Because Sanjay is retelling the Gita, or not retelling, but is sharing what's being spoken there, sharing the Gita with Dhritarashtra. And in this way, Sanjay had great powers. While sitting in the kingdom, he could hear what Krishna was speaking, and that which he was hearing, he was speaking it to Dhritarashtra. And that's this opening scene where Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjay, what is happening on the battle? And actually the fact that Dhritarashtra was listening to the Bhagavad Gita being told to him, retold to him by Sanjay, is actually a very good illustration of our previous point that I mentioned, that although Dhritarashtra heard the Gita from Krishna, his heart did not change. Even after that, he wanted the battle to happen. After he heard the Gita, he didn't send a message and say, let's stop this war. He was the king. He had the power to stop it, but he did not. Why? Because he was not a qualified listener, right? Krishna was a qualified speaker. Krishna's God, he was a qualified speaker. Arjuna was a qualified listener, but Dhritarashtra was not a qualified listener because he was not a devotee of Krishna, because he was not a friend of Krishna. The qualification, Prabhupada says, to hear Gita is to be a friend of Krishna, which means not envious of Krishna. And because he was envious of Krishna, he could not understand the Gita. The same message did not affect his heart. So a very vivid example here that it's not just the speaker or the knowledge itself, but the listener also has to be in the mood of a devotee to understand this knowledge. So this is where chapter 1 begins. And next time we will start from here, from Dhritarashtra Uvacha, the first verse, chapter 1. So I spoke a lot. Are there any questions or comments on the content of our talk today? That is, we'll just do it to about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll end. You can raise your hand if you have a question. It's Suresh. Sudesh Prabhu. You can unmute yourself. Sudesh Prabhu, did you have a question? You can speak. You can unmute yourself.
Oh, yes. I'm very new to this technology as well.
Okay.
And I have a comment to make. I feel very lucky to be part of this program, this Gita course. I'm very happy to be among all you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so we'll end here. Yes, okay, Mandava Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, I had a question. So one time somebody had asked me this question. Obviously, as a devotee, I know that Yudhishthira Maharaj is a very qualified devotee. So I mean, it didn't affect me so much. But somebody asked that Maharaj Yudhishthira, how could he put up Draupadi up for gamble? Him being we regard the Pandavas as such highly elevated personalities, devotees. So how could Yudhishthira Maharaj do such a thing? At least everything he gave up, okay, but how can you give up your own wife? So that was my question.
Yes. So it's a very nice question. What this shows us is that even great devotees can make mistakes. But even if they make the mistake, their greatness still remains. Right? And we saw many examples of this in Prabhupada's life. Brahmananda Maharaj at one time was having spiritual difficulties, but he did a lot of service for Prabhupada. He was actually Prabhupada's personal bodyguard. And he set up the first temple. He would pay the rent. He at that time in the hippie days, everyone who was joining was very like on drugs, like kind of very undependable. But Brahmananda was one person who was with Prabhupada and just very dependable. Like he would actually get things done. He would, collect Lakshmi. He would earn and bring that money to Prabhupada. So he really helped Prabhupada. And for this reason, he became a very great devotee. But then he had spiritual difficulties and he sort of wasn't following the principles. And so some devotees started to criticize him. And Prabhupada said that even if you see Brahmananda with a cigarette in his mouth, still he is a great devotee. Don't criticize him. So great devotees of the Lord can have difficulties and they can make mistakes. But their greatness is there because of their service to the Lord and their desire to serve the Lord. And sometimes that becomes, hidden or something like that. Like it becomes due to either the plan of the Lord or a mistake on their own part, but they never perish because they rectify it, they come back. So Krishna wanted to show the effects of gambling to the world, that even if you are dharma personified, even if you are the most wise, even if you're a great devotee of the Lord, if you gamble, you will lose your mind. So if even someone like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he didn't want to give up his wife. It was the greed, not the greed, but the pull of gambling, that I'll just win next time. The way they were playing was that if you get one roll right, this is the way gambling works, you'll get everything back that you lost. So he thought, how could I be so unlucky? This roll, I'll get it right. So he'd roll the dice. He would say, I'll give you, 1,000 horses. And the Kauravas would say that we'll give you 1,000 horses plus whatever you have lost, everything back. So he would say, okay, I'll just roll once more and I'll get it. And that cycle of gambling is designed in such a way to cheat others. It's a way of cheating that Krishna has given. It's a science of cheating. So if we engage in that, then even for Maharaj Yudhishthira, we can lose our mind. So Krishna was teaching the world through Maharaj Yudhishthira. And secondly, it's possible that he made a mistake. But a devotee is rightly situated, Krishna says in the Gita, even if they make a mistake, if they rectify that mistake very quickly, and also if it's a genuine mistake, they're not, they're still dedicated to the Lord.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Very nice. Any other questions, comments? Anandmaya Krishna Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I had a question. So we've heard, and maybe you've answered this question earlier, I don't recollect. And I've had this question for a very long time. So once the Pandavas and Draupadi and the dog, go to the forest to retire, and, they give up everything and just want to, be in complete, I mean, they were obviously doing devotional service all their lives, but give it up all and just, be in renounced, state. Why is it that when they did all of that and had led a very good, pious life, why is it that first the dog goes, then Draupadi, then Nakul, Sahadev, everyone actually dies, and then it's Yudhishthir is left, and all of these, all of them, it's said that they go to hell. It's only Yudhishthir who goes to heaven. So first question is this correct, Prabhu? And if it's correct, Arjun is an eternal Sakha of Krishna. So how did this happen? And
Yes.
and even how could Yudhishthir, who was Dharma personified, why did he go to the heavenly planets? So if you can please kindly explain that, Prabhu.
I guess. So there's many, you could say, stories surrounding the Mahabharata, some of which are, folk stories, and then you have the genuine original Mahabharata. The story of the Pandavas going to hell is a very karma kanda story. It's seeing things only from the ritualistic point of view. The Pandavas were eternal associates of Krishna, and so there's no question that they saw hell. After, Prabhupada says, after their pastimes here, they immediately joined Krishna in another universe where Krishna was performing his pastimes. So certain devotees have certain rasas, and they play that role wherever Krishna is. And there's some variations in the pastimes, but it's the same pastime that they may do in different universes. So that story, just like the story of Krishna being shot by the arrow, that is, it is the pastime of how Krishna leaves the world, but that's not why he dies, right? That's just a pastime to allow the materialist to give some material interpretation on the Lord. But the real way he passes away is by his internal potency. In the same way, the devotees of the Lord are always with Krishna. Now, as far as them dying one after the other, this is just how they give up their bodies. This is just, first Draupadi goes, then Sahadev, like this. Again, it's the pastime. The disappearance pastimes of both the devotee and the Lord are very difficult to understand. And they cannot be understood from an external point of view. Like Lord Ramachandra, he enters a Surayu. So people say, oh, he did suicide because he got depressed. This is very materialistic. It's just, they actually have spiritual bodies. Even the devotees, they have spiritual bodies. So their departure is 100% arranged by the Lord, and they all attain the Lord. But even at the very end, this pastime of the dog was showing Yudhishthira's selflessness. So, I mean, the devotees of the Lord teach until the very last moment that he would not go, he would not leave until the dog that helped him went with him. And this is actually a spiritual principle that if anyone has helped us in our spiritual life, a devotee of the Lord does not want to go back to Godhead without also taking them, right? Many examples of this in our literature. One is of Yudhishthira Maharaj here, wanting to save the little dog, right? Another example is Dhruva Maharaj, where Dhruva Maharaj did not want to go back home, back to Godhead, without taking his mother, because his mother introduced him to Krishna consciousness. She's the one who preached to him and said, go to the forest and stop complaining and become a better devotee of the Lord. So he felt grateful, and he said, no, I must not go without her. And the same thing here we're seeing Maharaj Yudhishthira is doing with the dog. The dog had been a companion, had helped him in the forest. So he said, I will not go without a dog. And the great lesson that we learn from this, therefore, is that if we help a devotee in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, or just them, if we help them, then they will take us back home, back to Godhead.
Wow.
This is, yes, very powerful, yes. And we don't have to be perfect ourselves. And this is something Prabhupada actually says in a purport. I can find it somewhere in the Bhagavatam. CC, he says, that not everyone will be the guru. Not everyone will have the qualities of a guru or the advancement of a guru. But if we help the spiritual master, if we help Krishna, if we help the devotees, then because the pure devotee is going back home, back to Godhead, they will also take us out of that gratitude. And in the same way, so this is in the case of helping someone more spiritually advanced to us. In the same way, if we become instruments in someone else coming to Krishna consciousness, and let's say we become, we get sidetracked, but if that person who he brings to Krishna consciousness, if that person goes back home, back to Godhead, that person may take us back to Krishna, right? Just like Dhruva took his mother. His mother actually didn't make it herself on her own qualification. She probably did, but as far as the pastime goes, but Dhruva Maharaj, he saw Lord Vishnu face to face, and he takes her. In the same way, sometimes, someone, imagine the person who preached to His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, or His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, or any of the great souls in this movement. They, if we preach to someone and they become a great devotee, they will take us back. That is the wonderful thing about preaching Krishna consciousness. But definitely, we know who the great devotees are. If we serve the devotees, then they're by helping them, we go back home, back to Godhead.
So, Prabhu, more than the disappearance pastime or who went before whom, is there any truth to this story at all, or?
So there is a truth. The Bhagavatam describes that they all go to the forest. They leave. This is in the Bhagavatam, that one after, Maharaj Yudhishthira leaves, Bhima follows him, Arjuna, then Nakul, Sahadev, and then Draupadi. They go to the mountains, and the Bhagavatam also describes the order in which they pass away, just like you described. Right. That Draupadi goes first, then each successive brother. So there's truth to that story, but not to the hell story. There's no truth to that.
Okay.
There's no truth to that. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. The story that Anandamaya Prabhu is referring to is that it's so many variations of them. It's so odd. One story says that no, Yudhishthira went to hell for one moment. Why? Because he lied. When Krishna asked him to lie, he lied, and therefore he went to hell. Can you imagine? In fact, the devotees say that not lying would have made a mistake, because it's disobeying the order of Krishna. So that's why we can understand the Mahabharata on so many levels. Most people understand it simply on the ritualistic level, or it's about being a good person, but they miss the deep level of being a devotee. And so other people say, no, the other four went to hell because they took pleasure in the fighting, or something like that. It's just something that because they had been warriors and had killed so many people, they had to go to hell for a moment, or just things like that. But we know that the Pandavas only fought because Krishna ordered them to do so. Sham Kishori Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam, Jai Shri
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you so much for the wonderful lecture, Prabhuji. I had a question that, sometimes especially when you're trying to preach to new people, they could say that Bhagavad Gita is, encouraging war and it's encouraging violence. And those with an Indian background understand the atrocities committed to the Pandavas, etc. But can you suggest a few things that how we can counter that argument when preaching to people who are new?
Yes, and actually, this is why today we went through the story of Mahabharata. This is why I find it very important to look at the context of the Gita, just for this very reason. So if people don't know it, we have to tell them that, well, this is the context, this is the history. This is why the war was justified. And the Gita does teach that, at a certain point, war is necessary. Prabhupada says, violence is necessary to protect the weak from the strong when all good argument fails. Right? So sometimes to protect from very demoniac forces, one has to fight. And we have to tell people that this is the history of the Mahabharata.
Thank you, Prabhuji, especially in today's context, right, where there's a war going on and things like that. So I know there Krishna was personally present to guide. He told the Pandavas to fight. But now it's hard to determine, when a war is genuine and really required.
Yes, yes. And that's why it's only under very specific circumstances one can justify it. And Prabhupada says the basic thing is that the leaders have to be God conscious. And because today's leaders are not God conscious, really there's no justification, because it's all out of a form of selfishness, right? There's no higher cause. And we see that war could be avoided by certain negotiations and things like that. But still, it's not so. Not to comment on that. It may be that we don't know the details, but the basic point is that even for fighting for our land, for our country, for our freedom, that's still not fighting for that can still be selfish. It's still not necessarily fighting for selfless cause, for a God-conscious cause, because it's still in the conception of my land versus your land, my people versus your people. The first thing to understand is that everything belongs to the Lord. Everything belongs to Krishna. And therefore, one should only fight for dharma. If not directly for the service of the Lord. So a devotee, so Arjuna's reasoning, this is the point here, that Arjuna's reasoning of not fighting is correct. That is religious principle, that is spiritual principle, to sacrifice oneself for the benefit of others. He was thinking about the innocent soldiers, their wives, their families. Why should there be so much bloodshed to put me in power? That's not a good reason. So his reasoning, according to normal circumstances, is correct, that let me sacrifice myself and everyone else can be happy. But then Krishna tells him, no, but you should fight for the higher principle, which is not for yourself, which is what we see most people in this world are fighting for, but you should fight to uphold religious principles, because the other side is broken. Any form of compassion, truthfulness, therefore you should fight. And then even higher than that, he says you should fight out of love for me, because I'm asking you to do it. And like you're saying there, Krishna happens to be there, so it's very clear for him. But even if he's not there, then he says you should fight out of devotional service, which is to establish Krishna consciousness or spiritual principles in the world. So that's the only reason to fight. To fight for my land versus your land is actually not, we agree with the pacifists. We should not fight.
So much, Prabhuji. Dandat pranam.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Vrinda Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you. Dandat pranam. Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction part. Prabhuji, I have this question in my mind for a while, actually. It's been going on in my mind. So I thought today is a good time to ask you about it. I'm sorry if it is not directly connected to introduction part, but it's like Krishna is stressing in Bhagavad Gita about the duty to Arjuna, right? Like it is his duty as a Kshatriya. So duty is given very much importance in Bhagavad Gita. So like we also have some duties as a human being, right? And one of the most important one is that towards our parents. Like many of us live outside India and parents still live in India. So, but I mean, I would like to talk about myself that my parents and our in-laws are still in India. And recently my father was not well. So I was really feeling that we are not with them in this situation. So, which we should do as children, that's our duty. But I mean, although we are staying here and trying to do our sadhana peacefully, but if we are not performing our duty towards parents, will Krishna be still pleased with that? Because Krishna is very much stressing on the topic of duty in Bhagavad Gita. So what do you have to say about that, Prabhuji?
Yes, we should do our duty as a service to Krishna, right? So, and service to Krishna means doing our duty for Krishna. So Krishna says in the Gita, the very book that we are studying, Krishna says in the Gita that one of the austerities of the body is service to the parents. So serving the parents is not necessarily just material duty or dharma, because it's Krishna's instructions. It's following the instructions of Krishna, which is devotional service. Krishna says that this is the austerity of the body, and therefore he's instructing us to do that. But the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee is that the devotee serves their parents so that they can also become nice devotees. He serves them so that they can advance in spiritual life, and so that they can help us advance in spiritual life. So the idea is that the way they help them is not just materially, but we also try to help them spiritually. And so I'm speaking like this because I'm thinking that most likely your parents may not be, or not but many of us have parents who are not devotees, right? Obviously, if our parents are devotees, then serving them is Vaishnav Seva. It's then very obvious, it's very clear. If we're going to serve devotees, then we might as well also serve our devotee family members, right? But in the case, I think your question is sort of, in the case that they're not devotees, what is our duty? So we serve them, and at this time, especially when they are not well, they're very open to spiritual life. Or we may say they have no choice but to accept spiritual life, right? So this is an opportune moment for us to serve them, and serve them by helping them materially and also helping them spiritually, by bringing them closer to Krishna. And I should mention here, please, Sudesh Prabhu, please keep your mic muted, just so, yes. And also we should not think that because I'm a devotee, I have no duty towards my parents, because since we are devotees, and we have this physical body because our parents have given that to us, and because we have this physical body, therefore we were able to become devotees. So a devotee is very much like Dhruva Maharaj, where they are very grateful to anyone who helps them, and therefore they want to see to their spiritual benefit. They want to see to them. There's one story that one devotee told me long time back, that there's one great saint, a great yogi, and a great devotee, and he was in the forest, and he was meditating on the Lord, and he was seeing the Lord. He was seeing the Lord in his meditation. So he was a great devotee of the Lord. And at a certain point, he was getting older, so, and so at a certain point, his old parents, they come to him and they say that we're getting very old now. You need to take care of us. And the yogi tells him, I'm very, absorbed in my meditation. I've taken to the spiritual path. And so this person is like a sannyasi, very absorbed, has no duty towards anyone. So he says, I'm very absorbed in my spiritual path and in worshiping the Lord, so I cannot take care of you. And so he starts meditating again. And when he's meditating, then he's not able to see Krishna. And so he asks the Lord, he says, why are you not coming in my meditation? And Krishna tells him that your parents came and you shooed them away. But you must take care of them. You have this physical body that you're using to meditate upon me. You have that because they sustained it, they nourished it in your childhood. And so therefore you have the duty to do that. And so then he goes and he calls them back and he takes care of them and continues his Krishna consciousness while taking care of them. And then again, he's able to see the Lord again in his meditation. So it's not an either or, right? We have to do both. We have to stay to our spiritual life and also fulfill these things. And that's why we see even great sannyasis in our movement. When, like in the Dumna Maharaj, there's a story in BTG. Many of their parents are still not devotees, but at the, when they get very aged, they go and they help them at that point. And they are sannyasis. They truly have no obligation towards anyone because they've 100% dedicated their life to Krishna. That's a higher cause, that's more important. So what to speak of us in householder life? So many times, Krishna will put these situations in our life to increase our surrender to Krishna, to see how we will manage both things. Like Ashwatthama and that story, Arjuna is told by Krishna, don't kill him, he's a Brahmana. And Bhima is telling him, you kill him. He's an aggressor. Ashwatthama had attacked their children. And Arjuna has to do both. It's an impossible situation, but Arjuna has to do both. And he finds a way to do both. And Krishna, Prabhupada there writes, this is just an example that I'm giving. It's an example from Shastra that illustrates a certain point. Prabhupada writes that Krishna was testing Arjuna by putting him in a situation in which he had to do two opposing things, but do both of them as a devotee of the Lord. He takes the jewel off of Ashwatthama, and in this way, he punishes him, but also doesn't punish him because he's a Brahmana. So in the same way, the devotee of the Lord will have to manage many things, but it's all possible by the mercy of the Lord. So in such a situation, like when Draupadi was in a difficult situation, she prayed to the Lord, and then Krishna showed a path.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
It's a very, very, just a general response to your question. However it applies in your life, you can see. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Just wanted to mention that my parents are in-laws. They are just on their way to become devotees. I mean, so
very nice.
Things. But maybe with the wishes and blessings of all devotees, probably I will do my duty better to make them devotees. I hope so. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. And this is a service to the Lord. So we should not think in terms of family life versus devotional service. Many devotees make this mistake that Krishna consciousness is what I do at the temple. Family life or materialistic life is what at home. No, when we are serving our family members to increase Krishna consciousness in the family, then that is devotional service. So this can be our devotional service. This is sometimes it's more difficult devotional service, or it's more advanced devotional service than the external things, which are easier to do, like mopping the temple, or going out on Harinam, or these things. They are easier in some ways than other services that Krishna challenges us with. So yes. Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, last one, and then we should end.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, Prabhuji, I have a question regarding our homeworks. I have already submitted Nectar of Inspection and Ishopanishad. I finished my exam, but my only concern was when I was writing the homework, whether I'm not sure whether my answer was right or wrong. So, is there any way that, after we finish our exam, if you can give us the answer sheets for these questions, that will help us. Maybe later, if we are also teaching to someone, we know the right answer. Is that possible, Prabhuji? I know you are very busy.
So some students, their answers are very accurate on certain homeworks. So maybe I can share their answers as like the answer key. After the exam, do that, or even before no, because people do homework at different times. Part of the reason I didn't do that until now is because I don't want an answer key floating around. Then people will start cheating, and when there's an official answer key, then people will stop doing the homework. So maybe I'll think about this one and see how we can do it. Maybe if someone wants a certain answer key, they can write to me and I can send it to them. We can do it maybe like that. Let's see. So if there's one specific one or certain ones that you want, you can write to me via WhatsApp, and then I can try to arrange that you get that.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your very kind attention. We went a little overtime today. It's the first one. That's okay. Next time we'll meet again, just like this, next week, and we'll do chapter 1. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you
So
so much.
I'll be giving you a study guide that goes along with this course. So you'll get the study guide also in due course. Hare Krishna.